Number 4, Jessica Jones. So here's an interesting one. I kind of joked about how it was easy to forget that Black Panther even came out in 2018, and it might have been a challenge for our viewers to remember these sort of titles that came out in the early part of the year, and thus be able to vote on them, though I have to say that didn't seem to affect our viewers' voting habits much at all. Plenty of stuff at the beginning, end, and middle of the year were all voted on without much meaningful difference. Which is good, because while I forgot and had to keep checking, Jessica Jones Season 2 did indeed premiere in 2018. Pretty early on in my defense, but while I had forgot the show actually came out last year, I definitely remember the show itself. Mostly because I've never seen a show take such a big nosedive between Season 1 and 2. Usually that early on, shows tend to expand and grow in interesting ways. Season 2 is usually where a good show will really start cooking on things and really start driving forward. A lot of shows, in fact, have pretty weak Season 1s, even though the show itself is very strong. That's why the last video in this series that we've done on Titans was such a strong show to begin with, and why I'm so excited about it, because it's only had one season, and so far that season has been very good. And it's fitting that while Titans managed to take the number 4 spot as the best show of all of 2018 as decided by our viewers, Jessica Jones takes the number 4 spot as the worst show in 2018 as decided by our viewers. It works nicely as a comparison because the two shows and their respective episodes from 2018 couldn't be more different. Where Titans episodes were individually exciting and each offered something on their own, Jessica Jones Season 2 was heavily serialized, deeply boring, shallow in its character work, and lacking a strong structure, plotline, or overarching villain, anything really, to sell it as a season and make it a memorable and moving experience. And it's worth noting, while I really don't like Season 2 of Jessica Jones, I absolutely love Season 1 of this show, and it makes it all the more disappointing. Season 1 of Jessica Jones might be the only thing in all of the MCU Netflix in my eyes that could meaningfully compete with Daredevil Season 3. It was really good, featured a very interesting take on a superhero, if you can even call Jessica that, and made her compelling while also offering a very cool villain in the form of Killmonger. The show pulled no punches and was excessively good because of it. Deeply intriguing television with a strong dark overtone to it that the writing easily and wonderfully matched time and time again. Jessica would later turn up in The Defenders, which was pretty middling in terms of a reaction, and Season 2 was filmed back to back with that. And that opportunity could have been very interesting, dealing with her fallout with this big event and encountering other superpowered individuals, which outside of her immediate circle of Luke Cage and Killmonger, she really hasn't done before. Instead, just focusing on the discovery, spoilers I guess, it really doesn't matter, of Jessica's mother surviving that car accident and getting into the origins of those two, getting powers and all this crazy stuff, her mother's instability growing while her friend Trish rapidly seeks out powers to the detriment of her own health. And that's the entire season. And a dozen or so episodes somehow managed to fill the time of something that I summarized in a couple of minutes. That's a deeply troubling aspect of this season that I think really speaks for itself. This season truly just doesn't have a lot to offer. We have our characters back in action, but it feels like they aren't being used to the full extent that they should be. The idea of Jessica's mother coming back and her having this powers and being all unstable is potentially interesting, but it's so drawn out and so poorly handled that ultimately the whole thing falls apart. It's really telling and deeply indicting that the most interesting aspect of the season, the only part that gave me any sort of excitement, was near the very end when we discover that Trish very much does seem to have managed to get herself powers. That little moment at the end of the season, it probably didn't last much more than 20 seconds, had my interest more than anything else because I do like this actress and the idea of her being in full Hellcat form is really cool to me. But that's a very small moment in a very boring season, and don't even get me started on the one episode where Killmonger shows up. Something like that could work if it was memorable, but the whole thing felt like the most disappointing possible take on the return. When it was announced that Killmonger was returning in some form for Jessica Jones, there was all kinds of cool theories as to what that could be, and the end result felt very underwhelming. Just adding to the character's internal suffering and angst, without any real sense of progression to it. if there was a line going on here between the Jessica Jones we saw at the beginning of Season 1 to the end of Season 1, from the beginning of Defenders to the end of Defenders, and into this season, it would have been compelling television, but instead it feels like she's just running around in circles. And there's aspects of that could actually work. That was a compelling part of her character in Season 1, that she was suffering from PTSD, and there's no just friendly, tidy character arc for her. She ended up defeating Killmonger at the cost of great psychological self-harm, and there was something very moving and tragic about all of that. Somehow, though, in Season 2, this trick just doesn't work. Jessica's character feels much more frustrating because it feels as though her behavior isn't as warranted as it once was. The chip on the shoulder feels there for the sake of the writers and not from the perspective of a well-written character. It's difficult to describe looking back on this show almost a year out, but it's just something in the writing that's present in Season 2 that wasn't present in Season 1. A lack of an understanding of this character's perspective that was so firmly done in Season 1 and so nicely put together. You can't replay that same tragedy again. You can't recreate the same sense of abuse and harm that Killmonger offered to Jessica in the form of her mother and all this stuff from her childhood that she didn't even know about until the events of this season. It's just not the same. The season isn't without value and key moments here and there, and it's not like Season 1 of Jessica Jones was ever perfect to begin with. But it feels like all the appeal of the show was hollowed out and we were left with a rather disappointing entry overall in an ongoing Netflix-Marvel partnership that is very much dying very quickly. As far as I can tell, the last hurrah of this will be Jessica Jones Season 3. And maybe, just maybe, it will experience a similar resurgence that Daredevil experienced for Season 3. Maybe Jessica Jones Season 3 will be a nice little hurrah, a final swan song for the show. Because I feel any chance of it experiencing renewal now is all but gone. If Daredevil didn't survive, there is almost no chance of this show being renewed after its already existing deal with Season 3 goes through. Season 3 has been filmed and done, and the show was pretty much renewed right when Season 2 came out, before the whole fallout between Disney starting its own streaming channel had ever been on anyone's mind or even been officially announced by anybody. In that time, what was once an optimistic roster full of shows, keep in mind none of these had been cancelled yet, and everyone was hopeful that Iron Fist could have improved stuff enough that it could have stuck around, and people were looking forward to Luke Cage Season 2 as well. Jessica Jones Season 2 was the beginning of the end. The third disappointing entry after Iron Fist Season 1, Defenders, and then this. I think at that point the damage had already been done, and by the time we got around to Iron Fist and Daredevil, it was all too little too late. And that's pretty much it for this series and the whole enterprise. I don't know if I'll be talking about it much again or anytime soon, and I have a feeling that these characters are going to go to the wayside for a little bit, in favor of other new properties and ideas. I do hope, if Marvel is correctly ambitious enough, that they do find a home for these characters, and maybe once all the dust settles, they will find a home over on Disney+. But I am skeptical, and we'll have to see where things go from here. So let me know what you think of this entry in the comments section below. Was this the worst show in the world of superheroes that you saw in 2018, or do you have another entry that you feel actually is worse than this? For now, one way or another, we are done talking about superhero shows in 2018, and as we move on to the next one, well, if I give away what it is in any form, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about as we get into the top 3 of the best ofs in 2018 with our next video. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. If you like Comic Island, be sure to check out our Patreon page in the video description below. And finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.